So there's no longer any denial. A private corporate government made up of the same banks that have imploded the world's economy by design. McClatchy Newspapers has written a 5-part series on the Goldman Sachs documents coming out, how this was all rigged. The banks have been given unlimited power to steal money. That's now in the Times of London today, that the UN's adding on a new tax with this plan for global banking bailouts. The UN will no longer have any power over this. It will be the IMF and World Bank that are the new global government who can, quote, this is London Guardian, secretly raise any taxes they want. And under treaty, our government signs on illegally to do whatever they say. And then our Senate says we're not going to do it. And Obama says, I'll implement it anyways then. High treason. Totally illegal. Absolutely impeachable offense, as Ron Paul said with us in the first hour today. Now, here is China Daily, the big government newspaper in China. Population control called key to deal. Population and climate change are intertwined, but the population issue has remained a blind spot. Yes, climate change. We have normal climate change, but now they say it's abnormal. First it was global warming, first global freezing, then global warming. Now just any change is not normal. Discuss ways to mitigate climate change. Dealing with climate change is not simply an issue of CO2 emissions reduction, but a comprehensive challenge involving political, economic, social, cultural, and economic issues, and the population concern fits right into the picture, said Zhao, who is a member of the Chinese government delegation. And it goes on to call for a planetary regime to reduce humans, and China then went on to say we want a global one-child policy. Now, what was in the National Post, one of the biggest papers in Canada yesterday? We have the communist Chinese that own most our debt saying we'll sign on to this if you set up a world one-child policy. And they're talking about getting rid of the tax credits in the U.S. for having children and then putting a tax on you. That's how the Chinese one-child policy started in 1975. By 1980, it was law. They have forced abortions, forced infanticide. They take the children, kill them, use them for medical experiments. That's mainstream news. The real inconvenient truth. The whole world needs to adopt China's one-child policy. The inconvenient truth overhanging the UN's Copenhagen conference is not that climate is warming or cooling, but that humans are overpopulating the world. A planetary law, such as China's one-child policy, is the only way to reverse the disastrous global birth rate. And they go on to say that we have to get rid of humans. Now, what does EcoScience, written by the White House science czar, say? Same thing. What does Dr. Eric Pianka at UT say? A global police state government, that's a quote, to carry out the orderly extermination of 90% of the world's population. They debate 80, 90, 95. Ted Turner says 95. Prince Philip says 80%. This is what the big banks want. They want to get rid of people. And they talk about how they're drugging the water supply and want to drug the water supply to sterilize you. And the sperm count's down over 85% in every nation that adds chemicals to the water, not just fluoride. I indict the globalists. I indict the UN. These are not environmentalists, well-meaning wackos that are just wrong. These are lying people that want to hijack the whole economy, have global taxes to the criminal private banks run by people like Ken Lay and Madoff, same crew. They were both, Ken Lay came up with the carbon tax plan with Al Gore. I indict you for genocide. Just your ethanol plan killed an additional 10 million people on top of the normal 15 million from starvation. Under the Copenhagen Global Treaty, double or right at double. Right at double. It's a little under double. The cuts have to be made by the developing and third world that the West has to make. The taxes. This will kill 1 billion people if implemented in the first decade. Those are conservative numbers. The magnitude of this. This is eugenics. This is starvation. This is mass murder. This is death. This is real. This has always been their plan. I have thousands of their documents, hundreds of their textbooks, all the UN documents, the State Department documents, the Club of Rome documents, a total Chinese-style police state murdering your children, forced abortions. It's real. You better wake up.
Jones.
Bob Chapman on the economy and the Copenhagen situation coming up in the next segment. We'll also go to your phone calls at 1-800-259-9231. So in the last 25 minutes, I've been covering the New World Order Master Plan, what their plan was, what they've currently set up, the open takeover, There's a headline in the Times of London, the end of freedom on the ocean, UN control over the ocean treaty, an international small arms ban that Obama says he's going to sign, superseding the Second Amendment. That's happening. Congress says they won't pass the UN treaty. They won't ratify it. So Obama says he's just going to implement it by fiat, high treason. And the stated goal of the carbon taxes by the UN and the taxes on all human activity and listing carbon dioxide that humans exhale as a toxic waste is to starve people to death in the third world, shut off industry and business so bad in the United States and Europe and Japan that everyone or almost everyone becomes bankrupt, government-run health care to control your life, to then carry out eugenics, euthanasia, forced abortion, the case for killing Granny, the cover of Newsweek, telling you how great suicide is and other articles, teaching children they're bad and that suicide is good. That's ABC News. People won't believe me. Pull up ABC News, teaching children when to die. I want them to see that headline, along with the cartoons they show them of animals being killed and say, see, you need to kill yourself. This is so diabolical, so cult-like, so evil. Training humans to turn off their survival instinct, to turn their survival instinct into something of species survival, which is false, to kill ourselves. We have to indict the people publicly for the sickening Malthusian, Hitlerian scum they are. Openly telling us planetary government to carry out one-child policies. Once you're bankrupted in the West, they will then come do an assessment and take your children from you. This is what they've stated. They're now announcing it. 22,000 homes in England now, children at birth. The parents have to put cameras in their homes, guilty until proven innocent for 6 months to prove they're not abusive. The child falls down once. You don't feed them right. They take your children. Cameras in homes, 1984. They are drugging the water supply. That's come out and been declassified. It's not just sewer runoff. In cities like Dallas and others, they've done studies where the Prozac is hundreds of times higher than it could be from runoff. It's being added. Meanwhile, the British, U.S., and Japanese governments, you can pull up MSNBC this year, proposed putting statin, anti-cholesterol drugs in the water when they cause all those liver problems, forced medication, and Prozac-type drugs in the water. Well, they're already doing it, as they call for in eco-science, to make you docile. Out of thousands of plastic combinations, 50 years ago, globally, a type of plastic was adopted that leaches powerful estrogen mimickers that sterilize men and make women hyper-hormonal and give them breast cancer. By design, the UN's been caught adding female hormones to tetanus shots that then sterilize women. That's mainstream news. This year, AP reported the UN got caught in Africa, Latin America, Middle East, Central Asia, and Southeast Asia, giving people live, weaponized polio, killing them in mass. Associated Press. Chicago Tribunes, Chicago Water in public reports, city silent over sex hormones and painkillers found in treated drinking water. It's being added in streams and rivers that have no human runoff into them. The plants, the animals are becoming sterilized, the frogs, the fish, the salamanders. It's being added. They've caught water supplies going to humans that have no runoff from sewage, so could not have these drugs. They found it hundreds of times the level it should be. You are being drugged. That's why you feel like garbage. That's why you can't get your energy up. That's why you can't get angry at the New World Order. That's why you've lost your vision. You're living inside the New World Order. When we come back with Bob Chapman, I'm going to tell you what they're going to do if they win and how they're going to carry out the extermination in a very brief synopsis. We have all the evidence from their own statements how they're doing it. How have I known all this was going to come? How did I know they'd announce global government at this Copenhagen summit? Because they said they would 20 years ago.